Today, everybody, we're going to be focusing on how to graph sine and cosine waves. Okay? What do you guys recognize this circle to be? What do we call that? The unit circle. Okay, so what I'd like you guys to do in your journal, I want you guys to draw this unit circle exactly. Just draw a nice circle. Doesn't have to be perfect, but draw a circle somewhere in your journal. You can put it right there and below. That's fine. Okay. So draw this circle. Basically, I want you guys to understand this is what a sine and a cosine wave look like as they are being drawn. Okay? So as you start plotting points around this circle, you'll see two different waves. The sine wave is in red, and the cosine wave is in blue. I'm going to stop right here at 2 pi. So right now I've traveled all the way around a 360 degrees, all the way around. This is your cosine wave. This is your sine wave. So we're going to practice drawing those. Like how do you draw it step by step? Okay? So what we're going to do right now is you guys are going to draw a circle. Looks like this. And right here, we are starting right here at this point. We are starting at 1, 0. 1, 0 is considered to be at 0 degrees, or you could call it all the way, it goes all the way around 360, which is 0 pi all the way to 2 pi. From here up, this point is 0, 1. And how many degrees have I gone around that circle? 90. So I'm going to put 90 degrees. In radians, though, everybody, 90 degrees is pi over 2. Right here, this point, we're going to call it -1, 0. Everybody, this is at the origin right here. This is the origin. This is at 0, 0. And right now we have gone 180 degrees, but what is that in radians? And last but not least, I'll do a job there, go straight down. This is 270 degrees. And radians, that's 3 pi over 2. So I want you guys to, that's at ordered pairs at 0, -1. Just remember, this is your x value, that's your y value. This is x, this is y. So make sure you know which is your x coordinate, which is your y coordinate. All right. I'm going to erase this real quick. Sorry, I got to drop everyone. There we go. All right. So the first thing we're going to do, everybody, we are going to look at y equals the sine of x. Okay. Also, you could also say y equals the sine of theta. Okay? But theta is we're going to be plugging in our x values and getting our y values. So what I'd like you to do is make an x and a y table. And we are going to start. We're going to start at 0 pi. Then we're going to go to pi over 2. Then we're going to go to pi. 3 pi over 2. And finally, we're going to finish up at 2 pi. So these are going to be our coordinates, our x coordinates. We're plugging in 0 pi, pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2, and 2 pi. All right, let's remember right now, the sine is always the comparison of the y value to the r value. Okay, it's y over r. So what is our r value in the unit circle? The r value is always going to be 1, which means this radius right here, this radius right there is equal to 1 unit from here to here. Okay? So let's look at 0 pi, what is the y value in comparison to the r value? What's my y value? 0. What's my r value? 1. So right now, I'm at 0. So at 0 pi, I'm at 0. just going to go and do y over r all the way down so you guys can see the pattern. All right, now let's go to pi over 2, right up here, pi over 2. Kind of hard to see. What's my y value right here? 1. And my r value is 1. So now I'm at a 1. At pi, at 180 degrees, or at pi, what's my y value? 0. So I'm at 0 over 1, which I'm back to 0. At 3 pi over 2, my y value is negative 1. And finally, when I get all the way back to 2 pi, which is you're at the same spot as you were at 0 pi, you're back to 0 over 1. So I want you guys to look at your pattern here. You have a what? A 0, a 1, a 0, a negative 1, and you're back to 0. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to plot these and make our own sine graph. So right here, what I'd like you to do is make a graph right here. I'm making an x-axis and I'm making a y-axis. I'm going to call this right here positive 1. I'm going to call this negative 1. So right here I'm at a positive 1. Right here I'm at a negative 1. Right here is 0 pi. So I'm going to write 0 pi. Right here I'm going to call this pi over 2. Right here I'm going to be at pi. Here I'm going to be at 3 pi over 2. And I'm going to finish up right here at 2 pi. All right, what we're going to do now that we've kind of made this sketch of this graph, we're going to take these points and we're going to plot them. So at 0 pi, what's our y value at? It's at 0, okay? At pi over 2, what's our y value at? 1. So here, at pi over 2, what I want you to do, pi over 2, put a point right here at 1. When the x is pi, what's our y value back to? 0. So put a point right here. And at 3 pi over 2, what's our y value? It's at a negative 1. So go right here at 3 pi over 2, go down and put a point right here. And then all the way back to 2 pi, you're right back where you started back at 0. Now, the graph does not look like lines. You're not going this way. It has a curve to it, okay? So these other points are going to curve through these zeros and down here to negative 1, and it's going to go back up. This is one sine wave. The period, everybody. The period of this sine wave is 2 pi. The period of a sine wave and a cosine wave is simply 2 pi. So where does sine start at? It starts at 0 and it finishes at 0. Okay? Sure. The sine wave has a period of 2 pi, which means a period means like you go one time around the circle. When you go one time around the circle, that means you travel 2 pi. These are all the points that are plotted when you plot all the points going around the circle. Okay? So if we look back at our here we go. I'm going to unclick cosine and just look at sine. So let's just look at this one more time, okay? This is what you guys did. You plotted 0, 0, then you did what? You plotted pi over 2, then you plotted pi, then you plotted 3 pi over 2, and then you plotted 2 pi. Now this just keeps going on forever and ever and ever. So technically, it doesn't stop. It just keeps going. So that's your sine wave. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and do your cosine wave. Okay. Go back. Go over here to the right. And I want you guys to have tables in your journal side by side. It'll make a lot more sense if you can see them side by side. So over here, put y equals, I'm changing it to red, putting the cosine of x. Or y equals the cosine of theta. I'm going to make an x and a y. Remember, cosine compares what? Our x value to our r value. So I'm going to use the same coordinates. I'm going to start at 0 pi. I'm going to go to pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2, and 2 pi. And now what we're going to do, we're not going to compare y over r, we're going to compare x over r. It's supposed to be an r. All right, let's look over here. You guys have the unit circle right here, okay? So right here at 0 pi, what is our x value? It's 1. All right, what's our radius? 1. So right over here, you guys are gonna help me out here, so I don't have to slide back and forth. All right. What's my x over my r at 0 pi? It's 1 over 1. So what's my y value equal to? 1. Now, Emily, help me out here. At pi over 2, what's my x value? You look at the unit circle. What is it? 0. So that's 0 over 1. So now I'm at 0. What's my x value at pi? Negative 1. So that's negative 1 over 1, which makes that a negative 1. At 3 pi over 2, what's my x value? 0. Puts me at 0. And all the way back at 2 pi, what am I back to? 1 over 1. So here's the pattern. It goes 1, 0, negative 1, 0, 1. So what am I going to do with these? We're going to build our cosine wave right next to our sine wave. So I'll put it right over here. Except I'll do it in red. So I'll make a x-axis, y-axis. Right up here, I'll make this my positive one. Right down here, try to make it about the same as I can. Negative 1. So once again, what I'm going to do, everybody, I'm going to start, it's a 0, 0 right here. So that's 0, 0. So that's at 0 pi. Right here, I'm going to call this pi over 2. Pi. 3 pi over 2. And 2 pi. Okay. Except now we're going to use these y values. So at 0 pi, where am I going to start at? I'm going to start all the way up here at a 1. So right here, this is your very first point. You're going to start right here. At pi over 2, you are back to 0. So at pi over 2, you're going to put a point right here at 0. Remember, this is your x-axis right here. This is your y-axis. At pi, you've gone down to negative 1. At 3 pi over 2, you're back to 0. And at 2 pi, you are back up to 1. This is one revolution around the circle, plotting just the cosine of x. Not the sine of x, the cosine of x. So that's what you're trying to do. That's the cosine wave. All right? The period of a cosine wave, everybody, is still what? It's still 2 pi. So let me spell it. So everybody, the period is 2 pi. Goes down and back up. That's your period. Okay. All right, so now that we have those, all right, I'm going to click on the cosine wave so you can see it one more time. Here we go. Starts at 1, goes down through pi over 2, which is at a 0, goes to negative 1, back through 0, and back up to a positive 1. So there's your cosine wave. What we're going to do now is we're going to zoom out, and we are going to look right now at problems 1, 2, and 3. So here we go. It says, for each value, find each value by referring to the graph of the sine or the cosine function. So this says what? What is the cosine of pi? So all we're going to do is look at the cosine right here. At pi, what's that equal to right there? Negative 1. That's your answer. See how easy that is? Boom. You're done. pi over 2. What am I going to refer to? I'm going to refer to the graph. Wait a second, you can't really see 3 pi over 2, so hold on. That's pi over 2. That's pi. Ooh, right here is 3 pi over 2. So where are we at 3 pi over 2? We're still at a negative 1. And then, negative 7 pi over 2. Hold on. Hold on, let's check this out. Negative 7 pi. I'm going to zoom into our sine graph, okay? Zooming in. Okay. So what are we looking for? We're looking for negative 7 pi over 2. So what's this point? What's this x value right here? Negative pi over 2. So this right here is negative pi, right? This is negative 3 pi over 2. This is technically negative 4 pi over 2, which reduces to negative 2 pi. What's this right here? That's going to be a negative 5 pi over 2, which means this next tick mark right here would be negative 6. By the way, you're both right. Negative 6 pi over 2, which is still just negative 3 pi. So if I go one more, right there, what's that going to be? Negative 7 pi over 2. So all we have to do is do what? Follow the what? Follow the pattern, right? Right there. So, what's our answer going to be? 1. Because at negative 7 pi over 2, what is the sine of negative 7 pi over 2? That's equal to a 1 if you refer to the graph. Okay? So right now, I'm going to go back a page. Go down here, and this is equal to a 1. Now, it says, find the values of theta for which each equation is true. So right now, I want you guys to look. What is theta when the sine of theta is equal to 0? So look at your sine graph. It looks like this. Ready? So would you agree 0 is right there, it's right there, and it's right there? So it's at 0 pi, it's at pi, and it's at 2 pi, but guess what? That probably would just keep going on forever. So the next one would be at 3 pi. So how could we write it? Not all real numbers, but all integers of pi. So you could say x could equal n times pi, where n is an integer. Not a fraction, right? Not a decimal, but an integer. And what does this little formula help you with? It tells you that's where everything is equal to a 0. Remember what I told you guys to write down, that table in your journal? Check this out. The y value for the x-intercept is always 0. They are located where? At pi times n, where n is an integer. So what I want you guys to do is I want you guys to do the other two. Look right now. The answer for 5 and 6. The answer for 5 and 6 are in this table right here. So write down the property that matches. Write down the property in this table that matches 5 and 6. All right. Right now, what I want you guys to do, okay? I'm going to show you guys how I want you to graph number 7 and 8. Okay? So here we go. Right now, on your paper, write this. Right? This is the x maximum. This is the x minimum. Right here, just call this the y max and the y minimum. Okay? We are simply, you don't have to have a graphing calculator, but this is new, so I'm going to let you guys use your graphing calculator to figure it out. Right here, we're going to graph from negative pi over 2 to pi over 2. Now, what's my x scale still going to be? My x scale is going to equal pi over 2, because the distance from here to here is pi over 2. So we'll put x scale, pi over 2. Pretty small scale. Okay? So here's what you're going to do. Go to your graphic calculator. Hit window. Change your x minimum. Okay? Change your x minimum to negative pi divided by 2. I'm going to leave it right there. Negative pi divided by 2. As soon as I scroll down, it's going to change it to a decimal. My x maximum is a positive pi divided by 2. And I said my x scale was also going to be pi divided by 2. For your y minimum, make it a negative 1. For your y maximum, make it a positive 1. And just keep your y scale at 1. Okay, now go to y equals. Type in the sine of x. Because that's the one that we're doing, the sine of x. And hit graph. That's what I want you guys to transfer to your paper. Right here, we are at a negative 1. Right up here, we are at a positive 1. It passes through 0, 0. So right here, very carefully, at negative pi over 2, you are at a negative 1. At 0, 0, you're at 0, 0. And right up here, you're at a pi over 2 positive 1. Except, don't just draw a straight line going across. It's not a straight line. See how it slightly curves? So try to get a little bit of curve right in here. So it curves, and then it starts to curve right there. Alright? So that right there would be your graph. It says graph each function for the given interval. So this is your first graph. Yep. So on number 8, don't worry, I'll go back to this one if I need to. On number 8, where am I starting? I'm starting at 7 pi. So what's my x minimum? 7 pi. What's my x maximum? 9 pi. Well, what's my scale now? I got to change my scale. Pi. My scale is pi. That's my scale. All right. Keep the y minimum and maximum the same. So I'm at window. I'm changing it from what? 7 pi to 9 pi. I'm changing my x scale to pi. No, not pi over 2, but pi. And now I'm going to hit y equals and not make the sine of x, but the cosine of x. And I'm going to hit graph. And that's what I want you guys to transfer to your paper. This right here. So how do I do that? Well, what's my y value at 7 pi? My y value was at a negative 1. What was my y value at 8 pi? It was all the way up at a positive 1. And now I'm down to a negative 1. So here's my suggestion. To make these graphs accurate, kind of draw a dotted line, like a gentle line going, create some boundaries so you can kind of keep it nice and neat. One of the zeros, everybody, one of the zeros is right here. The other 0 is right there. You're going to draw up, going through this 0, all the way up, and back down. Okay. And that's the answer for number 8. All right, so there was my x minimum, my x maximum, my x scale. My y minimum was negative 1, my y maximum was a positive 1, and my y scale was also equal to a 1. And when I use that and type in the cosine of x, this is the graph that I got. And I just take that and transfer it over to my paper. Why did I start here and not over here? Because this is where 7 pi is on my graph, and I'm ending it at 9 pi. This is what I want you to do for the rest of the paper. Okay? Just graph the what? Graph the interval that it's asking you to graph. The interval is from 7 pi to 9 pi. That's what the interval is.